Good evening. My name is Scott Cannon, S-C-O-T-T-C-A-N-N-O-N. I'm a resident of Plymouth, Pennsylvania. I'm a corporate and industrial video producer and have been researching and interviewing people about the effects of natural gas development for 4 years. I've been hearing that the Transco pipeline has been here for 60 years and has been relatively problem-free. 3 new gas pipelines have been built through this county in the last 3 years that connect to the Transco, and there have been approximately 20 incidents related to these pipelines, from mercaptan releases evacuating schools and businesses to an accidental discharge of 5.4 million cubic feet of methane from a faulty valve at the Chapin Station in Monroe Township, while no promised safety plan was in effect. The amount of calls from these incidents has certainly taxed the local emergency management responders. The drilling of those pipelines caused several drilling mud blowouts to occur, which caused the release of thousands of gallons of silica sand from the drilling mud onto our valuable wetlands. Silica sand is a known carcinogen. It's no secret that our DEP has been under fire for inadequately protecting the people of Pennsylvania from natural gas encroachment, and inadequate studies have not been conducted to determine its health effects. Promise me that there will never be an accident. Promise me that you can fix the water contamination problems with fracking. Promise me that you can stop the earthquakes from fracking and disposal. And promise me that none of the gas flowing through this pipe will go overseas and make us energy independent, and I will reconsider my position. Please use your responsibility wisely and deny Williams' application. I want my 7-year-old daughter and other families to live in safe residential areas, not a blast zone. I'm submitting a Pennsylvania Game Commission plan to protect our local environment and grasslands. The other document is a list of unique habitats in the Lehman area that needs to be protected. Please make sure the pipeline company is planning to protect the special habitat in Lehman and ensure they follow these expert recommended plans during construction along the entire route if it is permitted. May I submit these documents?
Sure thing. Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Dean Marshall.
Dean Marshall, D-E-A-N-M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L.
You might want to get closer to the mic. I don't think you're picking you up so well.
I don't have any letters after my name. I'm an 8th grade dropout with a GED, and I'm a lifetime welder. 5 years ago, I leased a house along Fishing Creek, right upstream from the Joint Fish Commission and Sportsman's Club hatchery, and found out that the land that I was going to be living on was leased for gas drilling, and a well was being placed right across the road from me, and that well was being built by Williams. I got involved. I went right away to a water withdrawal zoning variance hearing that Williams had all their engineers and all their lawyers and everything show up at our little overwhelmed Benton Township Council, and that was one of the water withdrawal permits that was being voted on by the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. So I went to their hearing, and while I was sitting there reading the literature from the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, it was telling residents, regular people like you and I, that we should be careful brushing our teeth and let the water run, not to let the water run and be wasteful, and to conserve and not water our lawns or wash our cars. And this was on a day that the River Basin Commission was going to vote on something like 26 million gallons per day worth of permits for frackers. I got up to the microphone. I didn't know what I was going to say until I actually read this. And then I got up to the microphone and I said, hello, I'm Dean Marshall. I'm a cross-addicted alcoholic. Oh, wait a minute, wrong meeting. And that sort of lightened the load. But I told everybody that this really was the right meeting. We're all addicts. We're addicted to energy. We have to have it, and Williams knows that. And companies like Williams and the drillers that they service make a huge profit in that knowing. Now they're not happy with the profit they're making from us. They want to ship this gas overseas. They have a bonanza in Pennsylvania with our governor giving them a free rein. So now they want to put in a 42-inch pipeline to be a public convenience and service their customers on the Atlantic seaboard. Well, we don't live on the Atlantic seaboard, so I guess we're not going to get any benefit of this cheap American energy independence. But it is going to go right to the Dominion interchange in Fairfax County, Virginia, where what we've been told by Williams is only 20% of that gas is going to go to Cove Point. Of course, they're also going to connect to the LNG facility in Philadelphia, and another one in Sabine Pass, and another one being constructed in Georgia or in process. So 20% here, 20% there. How much of the gas from the Marcellus, from this region, is going to go overseas? And when it does, how much are they going to be able to charge you for your gas here at home? It's my belief that this is not a public convenience at all. It's very convenient for Williams. It's convenient for Cabot. It's convenient for Anadarko, who wants to drill our state forests and state parks. It's convenient for Range Resources. Governor Corbett, he gets a lot of campaign money from these gas drillers, and it seems like the fact that he doesn't tax them, but he's taken money away from our education departments and, you know, cut funding to the Fish and Game commissions. He's cut money to DCNR. But yet the industry is growing, and we need more regulation and more oversight, while the oversight budgets have been cut to the bare bones. If FERC allows Williams to have a public convenience status on this pipeline, all bets are off. They're not going to care about any negotiated, you know, right-of-way that they might make with you people. They're going to put that pipeline through your yard if they want to, and they're going to use eminent domain, just like they did with the Mark I pipeline that came down from Central New York Oil and Gas down into Davidson Township in Sullivan County. They promised these landowners that they would not use eminent domain until it was a last resort. And yet the day that they got their permit okayed, they had 75% of those landowners that they served them with eminent domain. So I think FERC needs to think very hard about what the term public convenience means. I was at the meeting last night, and people were pretty hard on FERC as an entity, and some of the people here that are just doing their job. But when it comes right down to it, if you have the power to permit this, you also have the power to say no. It's not a public convenience. Thank you.
The next speaker is Hahz.
Hi there. My name is Adam Hahz, A-D-A-M-H-A-S-Z. I'm a 24-year-old resident of Silver Lake Township in Susquehanna County. I'm frustrated that FERC chose not to include a scoping hearing in Susquehanna or Wyoming counties, and I urge the Commission to consider the needs of those residents who could not make the long trip here for tonight's meeting. I recently graduated from Washington University in St. Louis with a degree in environmental studies. and I have serious concerns about the environmental and social impacts of this proposed Atlantic Sunrise project. I could speak about the many potential problems with the proposed pipeline, including impacts from increased gas extraction, specifically water contamination of residents' well water, or the impacts of pipeline infrastructure, which will decrease the property value for many property owners along the route. I could also talk about the impacts of compressor stations, including the noise and local air pollution that they create from this project. Or I could talk about the impacts of LNG facilities that this pipeline will connect to, including driving up energy prices and having significant safety concerns associated with them. However, tonight my main objective is to urge FERC to include the full climate impacts of the Atlantic Sunrise project in its environmental impact statement. Particularly, I am concerned with the methane leakage that will occur from this project and its lifetime carbon dioxide emissions. According to the most recent Fifth Assessment Report by the International Panel on Climate Change, methane is 34 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over a 100 time scale and 86 times more powerful on a 20-year time scale. If the total rate of leakage for unconventional gas is greater than 3.2%, gas becomes worse than coal in terms of warming. On a 20-year time scale, which is critical to consider because of the dangerous threat of climate tipping points, leakage of greater than 1.9% or more makes gas worse than coal. The gas industry claims that there is a low rate of leakage of 1.5%, but a recent independent scientific analysis says otherwise. A comprehensive Stanford analysis released this past February of 200 earlier studies concluded that an excess percentage leakage of 1.8 to 5.4% of end-use gas, coupled with the current estimate of 1.8% leakage of end-use gas consumed, generates a high-end estimate of 7.1% gas leakage. Similarly, 3 separate studies from the National Oceans and Atmospheric Administration found local methane leakages of 4%, 17%, and 6 to 12%. These studies cast serious doubt on the supposed climate benefits of unconventional gas. FERC should include a serious analysis of the total life cycle methane leakage rate created because of the Atlantic Sunrise Project and similar projects. Another issue I hope you will consider is the cumulative greenhouse gas emissions, specifically of carbon dioxide, that will result from the gas that will be transported via this pipeline during its entire lifetime. In its World Energy Outlook reports, the International Energy Agency considers the cumulative emissions that will result from fossil fuel infrastructure during its useful lifetime. In particular, the IEA has warned that on a business-as-usual scenario, the world will build enough new fossil fuel infrastructure to lock in emissions that trigger dangerous excess of 2.0 degrees Celsius warming by 2017. Given the short time frame of the evaluation and construction of this proposed Atlantic Sunrise project, this pipeline will contribute to these locked-in emissions. How much additional gas will be extracted and burned because of this new project and associated infrastructure, such as LNG export terminals? How long will this pipeline and associated infrastructure operate? The United States government has formally committed to a climate policy of limiting total warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius. But to achieve this goal, the IEA calculates that at least 2/3 of current fossil fuel reserves must not be burned. To fully evaluate the impact of the lock-in emissions from this proposal, FERC should evaluate the Atlantic Sunrise Project and all other similar new fossil fuel infrastructure projects by how they will affect the United States climate goals. In conclusion, I urge FERC to consider the full climate impacts of the Atlantic Sunrise Pipeline project. These include associated methane leakage and the total carbon dioxide emissions that will result from the duration of the project. Without including this information, your analysis will not be adequate. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Good evening. My name is Rebecca Roeder, R-E-B-E-C-C-A, R-O-T-E-R, and I live in Brooklyn, Susquehanna County in an upstream active gas field. I understand that FERC's mission is to regulate commerce and to bring cheap, reliable, sustainable energy to market. FERC's 5 commissioners are political appointees who can approve burgeoning numbers of natural gas transmission lines like the Atlantic Sunrise and give away private property rights through eminent domain for corporate profit and arguably for LNG export. I ask FERC to require that Williams Transco do cumulative environmental impact studies on all upstream communities like mine. The induced build-out at the Atlantic Sunrise will include more installation and completion of well pads, more pipelines, more compressors, more dehydrators, more natural gas power plants, more LNG processing and storage facilities like the one proposed by Gulf in my county, more cumulative air, water, and noise impacts, and associated public health risks. Require Williams Transco to provide access and transparency for an independent scientific study of the cumulative environmental, fugitive emissions, socioeconomic, and political impacts for all their projects along this route. In my county, that would be for now the Constitution and the Atlantic Sunrise Project. Don't let Williams Transco off the hook for accountability to all upstream communities for loss of quality of life through cumulative air, water, health impacts, real estate devaluation, truck traffic, road damage, etc. My county has no zoning and no setbacks for infrastructure except for compressors, a mere 300 feet. This is a dangerous industry happening in our backyards, front yards, and schoolyards, and no one is accountable to us for safety or transparency. Operators don't even have to tell landowners of spills or accidents that occur on their land. The Government Accountability Office recently faulted EPA for not stepping up fracking enforcement. EPA recently faulted FERC for ignoring upstream impacts, localized impacts of gas production, cumulative impacts, greenhouse gas emissions, and environmental justice populations. Well, I live upstream, less than a mile from the Williams Central Station, with about 20 plus wells within a mile from my home. The services of Wild Well out of Houston, Texas, were required twice that I know of in the past year in my township alone to deal with out-of-control wells. It takes 24 hours for the emergency crew to get there. No one tells us anything, whether it's a mercaptan spill, an out-of-control well, a blowdown, a compressor explosion, or fire. I had a sinus infection when I testified April 3rd, 2014 at the FERC EIS Constitution Scoping hearing, and I have another sinus infection diagnosed just today. I have lived in Susquehanna County since 1986 and have not had chronic sinusitis until now. I went home from the April 3rd Constitution EIS Scoping hearing to discover the water coming out of my kitchen faucet, well water, smelled like an organic chemistry lab. I am now using a water buffalo and bottled water. I understand that FERC's mission is to regulate commerce, but PHMSA, their mission is to PHMSA, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. Their mission is to protect people and the environment from the risks of hazardous materials transportation. Unfortunately, PHMSA staff has been cut, and their own head of safety, Jeffrey Wees, told a newspaper reporter the regulatory process he oversees is kind of dying. He said PHMSA has very few tools to work with in enforcing safety rules, and that a $2 million civil penalty would not hurt a major corporation. I asked FERC to require Williams Transco to provide access and transparency for independent scientific studies of the cumulative induced impacts of this project, including greenhouse gases and climate change. Consider aggregated regional impacts when reviewing applications for PUC status. I ask for, I ask FERC to deny the certificate of convenience, eminent domain, at least until these studies for the Commonwealth are completed and analyzed with transparency. I additionally ask FERC to deny eminent domain if it is clear this project will provide LNG for export via Coveport, Maryland. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is Barbara Clifford.
My name is Barbara Clifford, B-A-R-B-A-R-A, Clifford, C-L-I-F-F-O-R-D. I am a member of the Executive Council of Breathe Easy, Susquehanna County, BESC. and I am reading the following comments on behalf of BESC. Our mission and goal is to protect regional air quality and health of communities like Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, from potentially harmful air emissions released through the processes of shale gas extraction, production, and transport. We ask FERC to deny a certificate of convenience, eminent domain, to Williams for the Atlantic Sunrise Project because of induced build-out and cumulative impacts. We already suspect air impacts without the Atlantic Sunrise. As the Atlantic Sunrise Project would absolutely induce development in our county and absolutely worsen our air quality, again, we ask FERC to deny this project for this and the following reasons. We are alarmed that FERC has been ignoring upstream impacts on communities like ours, which are very significant. We ask FERC to require Williams to do a comprehensive air study from upstream to midstream to characterize the air pollution during drilling, fracking, flaring, green completions, pipeline fugitive emissions, and dehydrators and compressors. We ask that fugitive emissions be part of this study and that the Picaro surveyor be employed. We also ask for an independent team of researchers representing all stakeholders to conduct this comprehensive air study and to also evaluate cumulative public health impacts. We ask that continuous emissions monitoring systems be employed in this study at all natural gas sites, and for the data to be totally transparent for public review. We recommend that Dr. Michael McCauley, Department Chair, West Virginia University School of Public Health, Dr. Robert Jackson, Duke University, Dr. Theo Colborn, endocrinologist, Dr. Marilyn Howarth, University of Pennsylvania Center for Excellence in Environmental Toxicology, and Dr. David Brown of the Southwest Environmental Health Project be consulted on and participate in designing and implementing this comprehensive air and public health study. Thank you.
Next speaker is Duke Barrett.
Good evening. My name is Duke Barrett, B-A-R-R-E-T-T, and I'm from Dallas, Pennsylvania. I got involved with the issue when a young surveyor let it slip that they were going to put a compressor station next to the Dallas schools where the Transco passes by. Now, when the Transco was originally built, it was primarily an uninhabited agricultural area. Over the preceding years from the mid-50s, it's now become largely a residential area. But what struck me as interesting was the disregard for the negative effects that a compressor station would have in a populated area, especially next to a school. The interesting thing about this project is that it's new. They're not coming into an agricultural area. They're coming into a densely populated areas in places. And it's not a 24-inch line. It's now a 30-inch line. And the hazard radius now goes from about 300 feet to 500 feet, where if there was any problem or compromise of the system, that would be a blast radius that would engulf the areas on either side. And at a township meeting, I asked the Williams people, in our area coming down through Luzerne, through Lehman, in that hazard width, approximately how many occupied dwellings did that include? No answer. We don't know. Previously, when they built the gathering line that came through the area, I asked the same question, and they said, well, we're going to use thicker metal in the pipeline. Those smart folks at NASA who put a man on the moon on time and under budget used to have redundant failure systems. These pipelines that are coming in do not have that luxury. They put them in and hope that they work. And as far as a public convenience, we see the first gathering line come down, and now this is an interstate line. And the interstate line doesn't need zoning. All it needs is a Federal Energy Commission eminent domain right away as the court of last result. We're all going to be nice until push comes to shove, and then we're just going to put it what we have to do. And for it to be a public convenience, it would be if the gas was going to stay local, if the majority of the gas would stay in Pennsylvania, and if none of the gas would leave the country. That is a public inconvenience. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Andrew Kuklis.
My name is Andrew Kuklis, K-U-K-L-I-S. First, I'd like to read a statement directly from Williams' own literature regarding safety and environmental policy. Williams says they are committed to operating its facilities in a safe, reliable manner to protect the public, the environment, and employees. An important part of Williams' comprehensive safety plan is its integrity management plan, which identifies supplemental safety procedures that take place in areas that meet certain criteria of high population density, areas that contain populations of impaired mobility, such as schools and hospitals, and areas where people congregate, such as church facilities, ball fields, and parks. That sounds nice. The following is a not all-inclusive list of safety and environmental issues as a result of Williams Transco operations and interests in this country. In 1984, November 18th, a Williams Company's 6-inch pipeline ruptured in New Brighton, Minnesota, causing a spill of 40 to 50,000 gallons of jet fuel in an industrial area. In 1986, July 8th, a Williams Company's petroleum products pipeline ruptured in Mounds View, Minnesota. Gasoline at 1434 psi sprayed a residential area, then ignited, killing 2. In 1996, December 11th, a natural gas line operated by Williams ruptured just north of Tonganoxie, Kansas. 2003, May 1st, a 26-inch Williams Company's natural gas transmission pipeline failed near Lake Tapps, Washington. A neighboring elementary school, supermarket, and 30 to 40 homes in approximately a 4-mile area were evacuated. There was no fire or injuries in that event. The failure was later determined to be from stress corrosion cracking. 4 previous failures on this pipeline had existed in the preceding 8 years. In 2003, December 13th, another section of the same Williams Company's gas transmission pipeline that failed on May 1st failed in Lewis County, Washington. Gas flowed for 3 hours before being shut off. Gas pressure had already been reduced to 20% on this pipeline after the May 1st explosion. External corrosion and stress corrosion cracking were seen in this failed area. In the fourth quarter 2003, they were fined $20 million in a federal investigation for allegedly reporting false data to manipulate the California natural gas market. In 2008, a natural gas explosion occurred in Appomattox, Virginia. 2 homes were destroyed, damage to approximately 100 other houses, and multiple injuries were a result. The pipeline split just below the maximum allowable operating pressure. That incident resulted in a 2009 fine of $925,000 for failure to monitor corrosion, which caused the explosion. In 2011, Williams was fined $23,000 by the PHMSA for failure to conduct its own annual inspections of compressor stations. That's the PHMSA's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Transportation. In 2011, a Williams Transco pipeline ruptured with an explosion in southwestern Alabama. 2012, March, an explosion at the Lathrop compressor station in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, blows a hole in the roof. 2012, March, Transco Williams was fined $50,000 by PHMSA for failure to follow its own internal policies to control corrosion in natural gas pipeline in New York City. 2012, July, a compressor station operated by Williams Companies in Windsor, New York, was venting gas in a routine procedure during a lightning storm when the vent was ignited by the lightning, causing an explosion and a huge fireball. In 2013, March, Williams natural gas plant leaks benzene, which contaminated groundwater. In some places, the benzene was found to be 36,000 times greater than the levels considered safe for drinking. 2013, March, Williams 24-inch gathering pipeline ruptured in Marshall County, West Virginia. In 2013, a fire in a Williams central compressor station near Montrose, PA. In 2013, May, another fire occurred in a Williams compressor at Branchburg, New Jersey. 13 were injured. In 2013, June, an explosion and fire killed 2 people, injured 114 people at a Williams Geismar natural gas chemical plant in Louisiana. 31,000 pounds of toxic chemicals released. Further investigation revealed that 3 years of noncompliance with Federal Clean Air Act. In 2013, December, Williams partners were fined $99,000 by OSHA for the Geismar-Olphins disaster. In 2014, January, there was a fire at the Windsor, New York compressor station, the second in less than 2 years. In 2014, March, there was a fire and explosion at a Williams LNG facility in Plymouth, Washington. In 2014, April, there was an explosion and a fire in a pipeline supplying a Williams-owned facility in Moundsville, West Virginia. In 2014, April, in Opal, Wyoming, there was an explosion and a fire at a natural gas processing facility and major national pipeline hub. The entire town was evacuated. I'd like to state that the preceding was not an all-inclusive list of the safety and environmental issues as a result of Williams Transco operations and interests. Despite the various serious violations of internal safety standards and federal law, Williams Transco continues to cause environmental, safety, financial, and socioeconomic damage in areas where it currently operates. Using these past specific examples, the probability of future violations is inevitable. Other industries are heavily regulated, and just a small fraction of the incidences that I previously described could result in the loss of licenses and permission to operate. If permission is granted for the Atlantic Sunrise project, FERC should consider pre-planning for all potential resulting issues such as water damage, air damage, and safety concerns. Serious consideration needs to be given by FERC to this laundry list of negative safety and environmental impacts of Williams Transco's current operations. When the proposed Atlantic Sunrise project applications are formally filed, please strongly consider denying approval. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Julio, Palomo.
name is Julio Palomo, Julio-Palomo. I represent the Laborers International Union of North America. I am here to express my support for the Atlantic Sunrise Pipeline project filed by Williams. The proposed Atlantic Sunrise project will serve as the additional delivery line for the increased regional production of natural gas. Assuming the project is approved, Williams will be able to help to meet the growing demand for natural gas along the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast states. The growth of natural gas production in the United States is leading the country to become more and more energy independent. Companies like Williams need to be able to move gas through pipelines and facilities such as those proposed in the Atlantic Sunrise project. These facilities have many systems in place to make them safe, including monitoring 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with backup redundant monitoring. I believe the pipeline can be constructed with little environmental impacts and operated safely once in service. I also support the use of natural gas as a cleaner burning fuel source. The United States needs to continue developing natural gas resources in order to provide heat to residences and businesses and to provide natural gas for commercial use and transportation use. The Atlantic Sunrise project will deliver enough gas to heat approximately 7 million homes per day or serve the needs of large electric generating plants. I urge FERC to rule in favor of the Atlantic Sunrise project. As a member of the Laborers International Union of North America, I believe the project will help sustain highly skilled jobs for our members in Northeast Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you.
Most of those 7 million homes are in Japan and India. We don't want to tell you that.
Excuse me, please, no shouting from the audience, all right? Let's just be polite, okay? If you want to make comments after the speakers, all the speakers on my list have finished, you can come up and make more comments at the end if we've got time. Just please reserve your comments, okay? Thank you.
I wasn't raised on the farm, but I know what manure smells like.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Dave Horn.
Hello, my name is Dave Horn, D-A-V-H-O-R-N, and I'm also with the Laborers Union of North America. I speak in support of the Atlantic Sunrise project, which is an expansion of the Williams Transcontinental Pipeline, which has been in service for over 50 years. By increasing the capacity of the Transcontinental Pipeline, Williams will increase the amount of natural gas reliably available to the Mid-Atlantic energy markets. Increasing the amount of natural gas delivered to these markets, along with the increased service reliability, will be a positive impact on the overall supply of clean burning natural gas for heating homes and producing electricity. FERC and the state of Pennsylvania need to continue to allow pipeline infrastructure and compressor facilities to be built in order to keep natural gas prices affordable. Furthermore, the economic benefits of the Atlantic Sunrise project will be significant, including expanded opportunities for skilled labor and local unions and other contractors as well. Williams consistently contracts with several Pennsylvania-based employees and employs union workers. Williams also realizes the quality of the work that we have here in Pennsylvania. So in closing, I support the Atlantic Sunrise project and request that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission allow Williams to proceed with the project, including the construction of the Central Penn line and the 2 proposed compressor stations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tom Byron.
Good evening. My name is Thomas, T-H-O-M-A-S, Byron, B-Y-R-O-N, M.D. I'm a local physician, orthopedic surgeon, and impacted landowner, and former member of the Laborers Local 190, the Laborers International. My family has had an extensive engineering background. There have been licensed professional engineers in my family from 1904 until the present time. They have extensive pipeline experience. And I come, and I'll be a tandem, my wife will be next, as a landowner and a specific impacted landowner. I do laud all points of view that have been previously expressed, and they were cogently presented and accurately presented from all political viewpoints. Our point is that we own a 247-acre tract in Lake Township. We purchased it in 1981, and we could have used it as a personal and private preserve, and we chose a distinctly different route. We have allowed public access to our property for a variety of activities, including cross-country running, soccer fields, lacrosse fields. We provide, within 4 weeks, there will be approximately 2,000 to 3,000 people on our property for a cross-country race. We will provide free parking. We maintain the cross-country run course at our expense. The pipeline is going through the area of the cross-country run course. We bought our property to develop, we knew it had old growth forest, we knew it had wetlands, we knew it had seasonal streams, and we bought it for posterity. 3 months ago, we were approached by Williams agents who surprised us the fact that they are going to pass through bisect our property somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 feet, and it won't be much of a problem. It will be much of a problem. With my family's extensive engineering experience, pipelines always have an impact. And pipelines that leak have a big impact. The construction of pipelines always have an impact. Hazardous waste pipelines have larger and wider right-of-ways than municipal water supplies and sewage treatment plant pipelines. Our concern, and we have spent a significant amount of time in the last 3 months learning about pipelines and learning about our personal impact of this pipeline. We have contacted Williams on many occasions, and we get a specific corporate agenda. There's a corporate speak to Williams, and they do not deviate from it. And the impacted landowners, of which there appear to be very few in this area, they've nicely positioned it so they've impacted the smallest number of landowners, are deeply impacted. We feel there's a significant environmental impact to our property, and there's a significant social impact to this county. We have been unique landowners in allowing our property for public use, and extensive public use. I will defer to my wife, Joan, for further comments. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Joan Byron, J-O-A-N, last name Byron, B-Y-R-O-N. I'll keep it brief. I appreciated everyone's comments this evening and agree with them completely. I would like to know how FERC can, in the infancy stages, grant a large company with billions of dollars approval for a pipeline in a matter of a few months when I, Joan Byron, tried to get a 20-foot by 50-foot pond drained legally so that my neighbors could ice skate. I did this legally through the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEP. It took me 2.5 years to get approval for a small pond, 20 feet by 50 feet, come and see it. I needed to have the dam repaired so we could ice skate in the neighborhood. I did not get approval in the infancy stages. I got approval 2.5 years later. I was told if I did it without approval, I would be fined $20,000 in 1986-ish. I don't understand how a couple, Joan and Tom Byron, who bought a piece of property, a little piece of paradise for Dallas, Pennsylvania, to camp on, hike on, do yoga and meditate, play many sports. Young people from the entire Northeast have experienced this property. We had 26 colleges in our yard 2 years ago for the Middle Atlantic College Championships. They all loved it. It will be destroyed. And I would like to know, FERC, how you can grant because apparently, as stated by Williams, the document will go in April of next year, and the pipeline will be completed in 2017. I think that's what the Williams company stated, when it took me, and I'm repeating this again on purpose, 2.5 years to get permission for a teeny tiny pond to be drained. I guess that yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Spencer Johnson.
Following that is going to be difficult. Spencer, S-P-E-N-C-E-R-J-O-H-N-S-O-N. Ladies and gentlemen of the Back Mountain region and surrounding counties, greetings from the shale fields of northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm proud to be here to support the concerns of Pennsylvanians who've seen nothing but problems from a gas industry who said they wanted to be good neighbors. The Atlantic Sunrise Pipeline would pave the way for further gas infrastructure that has caused documented health problems, documented water problems, and irreparable damage to the environment. I'm working with Energy Justice Summit right now to expose the gas industry for the pollution and manipulation they get away with on a regular basis, taking advantage of the citizens of rural Pennsylvania and their trusting instincts. My current project is collecting testimonials of those who've been affected by shale gas extraction and related infrastructure, including pipelines. I've interviewed 11 people in Susquehanna, Bradford, and Wyoming counties, and not one of them had a redeeming quality to share about the natural gas industry or their supposedly, quote, good neighbor practices. The following statements are from the testimonial series Stories of the Shale, Pennsylvania, and are copyrighted under Creative Commons International License, so I kindly ask they not be used in any news publications, but feel free to use anything before and after the quotes, which will be marked by the word quotes. Carolyn Knapp of Knaptime Acres Dairy Farm in Bradford County has had her organic operation threatened by the gas industry. Of pipelines like the Atlantic Sunrise, she said, quote, "They leave us with nothing except the impacts. We don't get any benefits. The opportunity cost is substantially lower, and in the end, it costs more." Unquote. Referring to both the economic costs that increased demand in foreign countries will have on U.S. citizens when we export this gas at LNG export terminals like Cove Point in Maryland, and the health costs that accompany gas infrastructure, many of which are highlighted in this testimonial series. Craig Stevens, a sixth-generation landowner and Tea Party lobbyist against fracking, yes, Tea Party lobbyist against fracking, watched Laser Energy attempt to bore under Laurel Lake Creek, which led to blasting apart the creek 5 times in 5 days. Of pipelines in the gas industry, he said, quote, "They'll tell you this is easy. It's simple. We do it all the time. Then when you watch them do it, they really don't know what they're doing," unquote. Citizens' health and water are being severely impacted by natural gas drilling, fracking, and related fossil fuel infrastructure. Some of the people in this testimonial series have been fighting this industry and its life-threatening practices since 2006 and before. Approving the Atlantic Sunrise Pipeline would welcome more gas drilling in Northeast Pennsylvania, resulting in negative health and environmental impacts of various scales, several of which we've heard about this evening. It would allow further expansion of pipelines that snake through countrysides and woodlands and tracks, leading to compressor stations that leak and explode, shooting into the air volatile organic compounds and carcinogenic chemicals that damage our bodies and the environment, also things we've heard about this evening. We cannot afford to take the risks this pipeline poses to our health, our land, and our children's futures. There are alternatives to pipelines and fracking. There are alternatives to natural gas. To quote Tammy Manning, "There's no place for fossil fuels in today's world. We're in the 21st century. Let's start acting like it." Thank you and peace.
Our next speaker is David Baloga.
Hi, my name is David Baloga, B-A-L-O-G-A. I'm a resident of Lake Township. I've been a neighbor of the Williams pipeline since we bought our property 30 years ago. It's been benign. It's something that we never worried about. We know it's there. We sleep. My wife and I have our bedroom that we constructed about 12 years ago as an addition to our house. Is actually 40 feet approximately from the existing 24-inch pipe. About 3 years ago, Williams unearthed a section of the pipe to resurface it because a smart pig detected corrosion. They dug a Olympic-sized swimming pool excavation in our backyard, 2 huge excavators, one of which had a pneumatic jackhammer attached to it. It was a project that lasted, I would say, at least a month, if not 2 months. They dug up the pipe. They showed me a piece that they dug out of the hole, and they called it a remnant from the past. It was a ring cut off the original pipe. They threw it up out of the hole. We looked at it. It was as solid as the day that it was thrown in the hole. And that kind of reassured me that the pipe was safe. However, the pipe thaws the snow on our driveway. It's only 3 feet deep with the markers that are in my yard right now from the current survey that goes through there. So I know the pipe is very close to the surface. The pipe has not been a problem, but I'm not crazy about having another 50-foot right-of-way installed next to this pipe. Now, over these 50 years, the wildlife in the forest has overgrown and taken this pipeline and made it part of itself. The impact on the wildlife in the forest has been totally assimilated as if it was never there. I cut the grass on the pipeline for about an 800-foot swath through my property. It runs through my side yard, over my driveway, out my backyard. This pipeline is like my yard. I cut it with a riding lawnmower. Now, if this pipeline is expanded along its proposed right-of-way, they propose to run right alongside, and Williams has said that they would work with me trying to divert around it so I didn't have another 50-foot swath. Already a 50-foot swath of my property is taken for posterity, and I can do nothing with it. I cut grass, I pay taxes, I have liability insurance on it, I fight trespassers with horseback, bicycles, ATVs, motorcycles, and snowmobiles. Other than that, I get nothing out of it. I don't mind the existing pipeline, but I'm not happy about hearing that this pipeline will run alongside it, create a 60-foot to 75-foot possibly new construction temporary easement, a 50-foot right-of-way added to the existing 50-foot. We're talking about a 4-lane highway with full shoulders running through my property, in the center of my property for posterity. My property is approximately 590 feet, 600 feet wide at both ends where this pipeline will run through. If you take out just the right-of-way, the finished right-of-way of 100 feet from a 600-foot wide 10.19 acres I have, you can see it's a giant impact on my life, my wife's life, my children. We camp, we don't hunt. We haven't hunted since we moved there because we love the wildlife. We try to conserve the wildlife. I'm not an environmentalist, I'm a conservationalist. I believe in the gas industry. I support the drilling, I support the pipelines done properly, environmentally sensitive to the landowners, the environment, but this pipeline is going to have a huge impact, and I'm just surprised that it's going to happen so fast. If this pipeline goes through, what's to say in 3 years Williams doesn't say we need more capacity? We want to do the same thing again. We want to run it right next door. Take another 100 feet, another 50 feet. I'll have, when this pipeline is constructed, the 30-inch pipe plus the 24-inch pipe, a 54-inch pipe running next to my home. The construction crew that worked on that pipeline repair project told me they reduced the pressure in the line when they work on it. They said it doesn't matter. You will be gone. Your house will be gone. We will be gone. The road will be glass. You don't have to worry about it. Everything will be gone. I didn't worry about that. I'm not worried about it blowing up, so to speak. But I'm not interested in having this huge swath of land lost forever. The groundwater disturbance, surface water problems that I already have from the 50-foot right-of-way has caused me 30 years of dealing with driveway washouts and yard repairs and landscaping. Now I'm going to have another pipeline if it runs alongside. I will not be able to mitigate that without serious engineering controls. And the additional engineering controls to minimize runoff problems are creating even more disruption to my environment, my yard, and the character of my property. The wildlife will be fragmented even more because of this huge swath cut through this forest. I have 3-foot in diameter trees that will be affected. This section was lumbered in the 50s. It was clear cut practically. Some of the original trees are still left because they were on the border of the right-of-way. These are the trees that will suffer if this pipeline goes nearby. Now, I've asked Williams to reroute the pipeline around some of these areas that I'm most concerned with, but they said they'd have to bring it back in to connect at the end of my property. That's not going to help me because that's just going to bring the runoff right to my driveway where I already have problems. My wife and I bought this property for the protection of our well, the privacy of our home, and the forest and wildlife habitat that it has. The trout stream across the street is of the highest quality. It's Harvey's Creek, which is also an emergency water supply for the Seastown Reservoir that services 50,000 plus residents of Wyoming Valley. Any type of erosion, surface runoff, or disruption to the environment that can cause soil or other pollutants to run into that stream is a big problem because this source water is used when the dam can no longer take its normal capacity from other sources. This is the emergency supply for the dam. So if there's a drought, they pump the water from this creek into that reservoir to supply those residents. That is when this would be the most vulnerable to any type of problem, and that's what scares me about that. Now, the 100-foot swath of right-of-way runs right down this hill, and it's an 8-foot drop for every 10 feet. It runs down that embankment into Harvey's Creek, and I can't see any kind of engineering controls that are going to be able to mitigate the huge amounts of runoff that we already get from snow melts and hurricane force storms. Again, I say, will Williams come through and run another line in the future and take more of my property? And the impact to the landowners is forever. I get nothing from this. I already have it. I know what it's like. I know what the construction is like. It's forever. I get nothing else besides the initial payment forever. I would ask that the eminent domain not be allowed so that impacted landowners have the maximum control of the route on their property or the rejection of that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Audrey.
That's me.
Thank you.
It's Audrey Gozdiskowski, AudreyGozdiskowski, and he's going to need a rest now. I'm from Wyoming County. I'm here representing myself in part, but mostly for the folks who cannot speak for themselves. I own a social enterprise called Hands-On Recovery, and we advocate for people with intellectual, mental health, and physical disabilities. We empower them and try to help them live successfully in our community. To get my own interests out of the way, I have experienced throat constrictions. We get very little sleep where I live. We have 105 average trucks. Currently, the last 3 years, 24 hours a day, it's gone as low as 60 and as high as 160 when we have counted them. And all humans need sleep. And with additional activity from the pipeline, that's going to only increase. Our air quality is going to increase, and I've never had a throat constriction in my life, and it's the most scary feeling not to be able to breathe. The folks that I work with, that I'm here to speak for, that can't speak for themselves, URS had a place for people with developmental disabilities to go, but now it's in our downtown area. They like to frequent stores like everyone else. They vote like everyone else. They breathe air and need clean water like everyone else. I'm sorry, I'm going to get upset. But a lot of these individuals can't even cross the street because the traffic is so horrific, and have had asthma attacks, COPD attacks. One person was hit while riding their bike, and it was a gas industry pickup truck. Didn't even stop, and the person luckily wasn't hurt. So to bring more of this into our area is very scary. A lot of the folks have been displaced because of high rents. They've been what we call couch hopping, a lot of people in our community. So there's a lot of social impacts. They can't afford the rent. As far as cheap natural gas, we just got notices that our utility bills are going to go up 16.6%, which is going to be higher than the wind power I'm receiving from the windmills in my backyard without any of these impacts. And the strangest thing that I find about the windmills in my backyard is they turn them off when the grid is filled. So the windmills are already there, but we're going to expand pipelines for more natural gas electricity when there's electricity sitting there that's going to potentially be cheaper than the 16.6% hikes because we're paying for the infrastructure. We have no zoning in our community. We have no COPAMs, which is a complete air monitoring, so we don't know what we're breathing. And as other people have previously said about it being exported, we are going to get 100% of the impacts, whether it's 1% going overseas, 20% going overseas, or whatever. I understand people wanting jobs, but labor statistics show that 7 times the fatalities are in this industry than in any other, and most of it is in transportation. I would be concerned about that as well. I mean, workers' safety, too. I would ask FERC to request Williams, who has a very poor track record, because according to DEP, which has not been working to its 100%, as anyone has read the paper recently knows, they have been levied the most fines in the last past year. So I would just also, a lot of our folks enjoy fishing and other recreational activities. We have what's called Riverside Park, but you can't even hear yourself speak at this point. And again, they have to cross where there's a bypass with very heavy traffic. They do enjoy fishing, and I've taken folks fishing, and we ran into a drilling mud blowout under a creek, so that concerns me since they're planning on going under streams. The bentonite, I had called the Fish Commission, and they said bentonite is not benign to our wildlife. It gets into the fish gills and suffocates them, and this was about 2 weeks prior to the time they were going to stock the creek. So I do ask that FERC do not permit public convenience or eminent domain, and I request that they require Williams to do a complete cumulative health, environmental, and social impact study. I think, everybody, these folks that I'm speaking for aren't getting a penny from this. They don't own property, but they're getting all the impacts. Thank you.
Next speaker is Joan Friedberg.
Good evening. Thanks for coming here. My name is Joan Friedberg, J-O-H-N-F-R-I-E-D-B-E-R-G. I own 70 acres of clean and green property and Wyoming County, the pipeline will pass approximately 2,000 feet from my perimeter of my property. I turned down $400,000 just to sign an agreement, even though I was surrounded by other property owners who had signed on. That was for exploration. I'm not opposed to energy or the exploration for energy or the use of energy. What I am opposed to is the failure of Wyoming County, of Pennsylvania, and of the United States government to condition, for instance, FERC's approval process based on some demonstrable proof that the people in this country are starting to conserve their resources, and this is not a green light to continue a lifestyle that is wasteful and I think out of touch with the dwindling resources that we have and the rising number of people, say in China, who are going to need more and more resources just to maintain a basic level of life. There's an issue that has not come up here, strangely enough, which is noise pollution. Now, where I live, there's a valley, and noise tends to bounce off the walls of the valley. From my door, perhaps a mile or 2 or 3, will be a compressor station with 15,000 horsepower. Picture 50 Cadillacs running full speed. The question is, what does our community know about noise pollution, and what rights do they have to actually deal with this? And I don't believe we've seen any effort to bring this to the attention of the public and to examine specifically the criteria that the Williams company uses. I think they say 300 feet from the nearest settled area is where the decibel level is going to be measured. I would like to know more about daytime and nighttime noise pollution. I would like to know specifically the costs of per decibel of sound, reducing it, and whether or not the federal government deems this worthy of allowing the convenience issue to be, put into law, meaning that if it turns out that we have lost the quiet of our community, of our county, what rights do we have? Because if the government allowed them to do this, to put this compressor station in with, I have to believe, totally inadequate safeguards and totally inadequate effort to educate the public as to these issues and what rights, if any, they have and what they can do about the issue of compressor station noise pollution. So that's my major concern. I have a second concern over the issue of drilling underneath streams. Within about maybe 1,000 feet of the pipeline route is a historic spring, one that has a very interesting part of Pennsylvania history, of Wyoming County history, and it happens to be on private land. This is curative water, water coming out of the ground that has sulfur in it. The pipeline will probably go underneath within 500 feet or probably maybe 1,000. I've asked the survey crew whether this was in their domain, and they said it's not close enough. I would like to have more information about how the public can bring to FERC's attention how we can actually address this before it's turned into a public convenience. And that's my primary concern, and I hope you will address that and amend your processes before asking, ruling on the issue of convenience. Thank you.
Our next and last speaker that I have on my list is Alex Lotorto? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Alex Lotorto, and it's ALEXLOTORTO. I come from a couple organizations. My first is I'm a union delegate for the Industrial Workers of the World of the Northeast Pennsylvania General Membership Branch. So I'll be partially speaking as a labor representative for our union, from my own perspective, and also as a consultant for Energy Justice Network, which is my environmental nonprofit. I'm also a grounds technician. I've installed acres and acres of erosion control and sediment silt fence and compost socks, and I'm aware of, as a trout fisherman, the impacts of sedimentation in our creeks. First of all, I need to request, as a resident of Susquehanna County, that there be a hearing in Susquehanna or Wyoming County so that residents in the Greenfield portion of the central North Penn line of this project actually can attend. From Mountain View School District, which is the beginning of the line, this is almost an hour drive to get here on back roads, and it's not an easy convenience for people who are working to come here and make it on a weeknight like this. So during in the next in EIS hearings portion of the process, please hold a hearing there. Second, I have two sensitive areas I'd like to bring up. One is Tunkhannock Creek is crossed twice by this project, and it's a treasure for trout fishermen. And in the lower part of the creek is bass will enter the creek for spawning and for fishing there. I'm concerned also with the crossing of the Susquehanna River that there is no bedrock underneath to contain drilling muds and bentonite clay and the gelling agents that are added from entering the creek from the bottom, where you find macroinvertebrates that are thriving, caddisfly larvae, mayfly larvae that the trout eat, that you get brookies and trout that you can catch there. It's also a great economic engine for the area, for sportsman stores and for bed and breakfasts and things, where hunting clubs and fishing clubs that will come into the area throughout the year to fish. The second is on Route 92 in Nicholson, just west of the Nicholson Bridge. There is a cemetery that has grave sites dating from 1776 that have flags on them, which I'm sure the VFW or American Legion assigns to the graves. Obviously, we're veterans of the American Revolutionary War. And there's a survey stake right in the middle of the cemetery at the entrance to it from your company, from FERC, your company, and Williams Company, because I believe that this needs to be minded that there's grave sites in the middle of the right-of-way that are heroes of the American Revolution. The third is the compressor stations. I noticed that some compressor stations on the route are electric, some are combustion fired. And for the union brothers in the room who testified, when a company, especially a transmission line company like Williams or NiSource or Kinder Morgan, choose to use combustion in their combustion engines in their facilities, they cut out the IBEW, which are your union brothers and my union brothers too, from putting the best practices in. If you look at the EPA Natural Gas Star program, the companies sign on, including Williams and NiSource and Kinder Morgan, that electric compressors are the best way to control emissions from the facility, protect public health, and they create the most jobs. So if you're labor in the room, you should be advocating for the electric compressors, and you shouldn't be going along with the company who's going to take advantage of you in your project labor agreements, and it's going to put your guys to work for the smallest amount of man hours they can possibly drive out of you. Okay, so please do not bow down to these companies. They're your bosses. Unions need to organize to keep the bosses in check, not lobby on their behalf. So for the labor, that's my comment. The second is blowdowns, the same for the steam fitters and the boiler makers in the room. Blowdowns are unnecessary now. Also, the EPA natural gas star at these compressor stations where you've had venting at the dehydration stations as well are not necessary. If there's an interconnect with pipeline systems, you can blow the gas in the system during maintenance periods into another pipeline interconnect, and so that's not necessary either. And that creates more jobs to put in blowdown controls. And the last is the condensate tanks on these compressor stations. There's not going to be in the EIS any definition of whether they're going to have volatile organic compound controls, which is now an EPA rule starting on January 1st next year, that condensate and production tanks along pipelines and at well pads have to be have capture systems for VOCs. No more than 4 tons per year can be emitted, and those are vented. They are just sitting sitting on the site vented from these compressors. The plumbing for the gas is already in place. Williams has a gathering system north to south in Susquehanna and Wyoming counties that is immediately west of the right-of-way that they're proposing. So greenfield right-of-way isn't necessary, and for landowners who've already negotiated with Williams, I would like to see Williams consider the right-of-ways that they already have. The other is that the molecules of gas can also travel a little farther east to the Columbia natural gas system that goes along the Delaware River through Easton, which interconnects with the Transco and below Philadelphia into your Cove Point LNG export terminal. And that gets the gas north to south already. That's already plumbed in the ground, but it's not a Williams company, it's NiSource. So by building this, you are effectively cutting your competitor out of the LNG demand by building it north to south directly to the Cove Point export terminal. And it's no wonder you named it Atlantic Sunrise. The last couple things I'd like to talk about are the economic value of the land, the timber in the greenfield right-of-way, generationally considered in terms of property owners using foresters to log the land sustainably with biologists and conservationists and soil scientists advising a sustained yield logging program in Northeast Pennsylvania, coupled with drawing manufacturing jobs back to manufacture wood and timber products, could sustain this area for generations yet to come. The jobs that are generated for this construction are just temporary. The gas industry drills booms and busts how many wells they drill every year because of the methane price. And we have a raw material that for 250 years Pennsylvanians have been harvesting is timber. And I'd advocate that the value of the timber generationally be considered, not just per tree, because the forested acreage can be used again and again for economic value. Pipeline right-of-ways cannot. Real estate values. There's a website called Realty Track. They track the median sales price of homes in the area. You can go down to zip code and you can also buy the data for the entire area. I demand that EIS consider the loss of real estate economics in areas where Williams has built pipelines or other pipelines have been installed, so that real estate values and losses to the real estate industry can also be considered as externalities, as economics defines it. And the last is and I'll leave you with a conservative talking point, which is from the Alliance for American Manufacturing. They, and for unions who know, the U.S. Steel is a member, the major big corporations and manufacturers in the United States are opposed to LNG export because it means that the methane that they use to fire blast furnaces, to make sheetrock, to make anything that you need natural gas to make for an industrial use, will be sent overseas to where our jobs went. Okay, they also are questioning the use of natural gas for electric generation, where there's a 900 megawatt generating facility proposed in Berwick, which would likely be fed by this pipeline if it's built, by Moxie Energy. It was on NEP a few weeks ago. That proposal is a waste of the gas that people sacrifice so much for this to be extracted. And this pipeline there should be no need for this pipeline. It hurts externalities and economics from real estate, timber, tourism, recreation in our area. I forgot farmers. There are some dairy and beef cattle farmers in the area that are concerned about pasturing their cows during the construction phase, or whether their cows will be segregated from the construction equipment, whether the company will put in temporary rail fence or so I've been talking to landowners. Lastly, for landowners in the room, feel free to talk to me afterward. We are forming a landowners coalition for anyone who has concerns with their property or in the area. Thank you.